Electrifying show in media. A Neighbor's Choice. And I'm your host, your neighbor, David Granosky. So glad to be with you again for another journey through the news, live on radio, on audio stream, on our website, aneighborschoice.com. Make sure you go there, subscribe to our newsletter to stay in touch with everything we're doing. That is the most reliable place to get all of our content. With our newsletter in tow, you'll be able to see our online-only podcasts, our exclusive articles, our deep dives with the world-class nutrition experts and scientists and doctors that we have on our website. So make sure you go to our website, aneighborschoice.com, write your email to subscribe today to get all of our content. Meanwhile, you can also watch us on Rumble live stream. Search for A Neighbor's Choice, our channel there. You can subscribe and watch the video stream every day, Monday through Friday, from 4 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time. In addition to that, you can email us, hello@aneighborschoice.com. So there's a lot of stories going on today, and I'm going to try to go through as many as we can. We've also got some special guests coming on that you'll want to hear from. We'll hear from, in a little bit, a restaurant owner who is fighting back against the vaccine fascist passports requiring you to go into restaurants and gyms and concert facilities, anything like that, anything to do with a social life. They want to choke you out of it, in addition to trying to screw you over with getting you fired if you don't want to take these products. Or if you're in the case of this, as I told you, I heard the story being on a conference discussion where we heard the story of this woman, and there's many like her, many like her, who she wanted to get the product. She got her first dose of the product. It gave her anaphylactic shock. She can't get medically the second shot because she had this reaction. But now she's banned. She has been created she's been put into this fascist segregation state. And New York City couldn't care less. Their leaders are very, very hateful and callous. They don't care. They don't care about science. They don't care about human beings. They don't care about compassion, empathy. They don't care about data. They don't care about telling you to stop eating seed oils so all of us can be healthier than ever before. They don't care. They're just callous jerks using this crisis to consolidate market power for big restaurant chains who can comply with fascist edicts and papers, please type stuff, a lot easier than small mom and pop. So we're going to hear from a restaurant owner in New York City later today on this show to learn what he's doing to fight back, to resist, to allow people to eat in his restaurant who he wants to have without having this kind of intrusion. In addition to that, for those of you here in Florida, we'll hear from State Representative Anthony Sabatini, who's a frequent guest of the show because of his work in being on the front lines of fighting for liberty and challenging the toxic lockdown policies. He'll be on to talk about his new challenge to the Florida State Legislature to ban all vaccine and mask mandates in the state of Florida for all entities. So we're going to hear what he's doing in that regard shortly. Michael Malice has a tweet out. He's a podcast host. He says they're more scared of getting the virus than having the virus because they've been trained to believe that means they've done something wrong. And that's exactly right. They're more afraid of getting it than actually having it because they have been taught by this dubious media press, which are PR firms for giant corporations and government agencies. If you haven't figured that out yet, you haven't been awake for the last 20, 30 years. So there are PR firms who are shilling lies, disinformation, and propaganda 24/7. And so folks have been conditioned to buy into this stuff, that they're a bad person if they get sick. This is very superstitious. This is mimetic groupthink. This is sacred religious thinking. The ancient world, They thought, remember when Jesus was dealing with people who were sick? They thought, if you're sick, it's because the gods hate you. That you did something wrong or your family did something wrong and you were cursed. That thinking is still around. That primitive thinking is still around. That barbaric, brutish way of approaching medical situations is still around today. And they just try to cover it up by saying things like the science. Well, as Zizek would say, big others, these transcendent big others, don't have to just be a traditional god like God or Allah or whatever. It can be Thor or whatever. It could also be things like the science, the new atheism. That's a religion, right? And so these little appeals to these transcendent big others are important for people who want to maintain a sense of sanity despite believing in insane ideologies, like the idea that if I wear a mask while I'm running out in a park by myself, I will stop myself from getting the virus. No, that's stupid as can be. Only a fool would believe that, or someone who's owned by mimetic groupthink, paralyzed in a state of delusion, a state of stupor. And that's why, but the media feeds that stuff. That's why they're attacking alternative solutions that people are using all over the world, both doctors, clinics, governments, Peru, City of Mexico, other places, Tokyo Medical Association chair talking about early treatment options. And they're all pushing it. Why? Because guess what? These early treatments are having great success. But your media is owned by big pharma and big government groupthink. And so what do? They come out and they spin it with a disgust mechanism saying, ooh, it's deworming, it's deworming, it's deworming. And they say, ooh, it's cattle medicine. And then they got this little meme going into their low info crowd, the little parrots that regurgitate their nonsense with no self-awareness. They got them saying, oh, if they say that we're the sheep for following our government, but they're the sheep because they're taking medicine for animals. The only reason why people should not go to that direction, the only reason why people do is because we have such a rigged, state-owned cartel medical system. And a lot of people's doctors, and even if they get a doctor that does prescribe early treatment solutions, then their pharmacies won't fulfill the medicine, or there's a shortage of the medicine in the human form. And so people are desperate and they do desperate, extreme things, and they go and get other forms of it. And so the dumb, idiotic, low-info government, low-info media complex, they prey on that and say, ooh, there's an opportunity we can spin to apply disgust mechanism feelings in your heart when you hear the idea that people are turning to animal medicines. Oh, there must be animals. They must be gross. Ew. I wouldn't eat dog food. I certainly wouldn't take. But that's just totally a psychological manipulation. That's what, Big Pharma has been doing this for years. They attack anything. They always attack off-label generic drugs because off-label generic drugs put them out of business. Their entire business model is based on finding new products that they can patent. And once they patent it, then that's what allows them to afford the FDA approval process, which is supposed to take 10 to 15 years and $1 billion of trials to get through. That patent is what builds their entire business model. It's the arc, so to speak, that protects them from all the costs that the government puts in the place to comply with their standard of approval, so that things that are natural and things that are off-label don't have the kind of money to get back to back them through the $1 billion price tag to get the FDA approval. So their entire model, okay, is totally owned by this paradigm. That's a fact. That is a fact. That is the entire purpose and model of the incestuous relationship between big pharma and big, government agencies. Their whole model is, we create the $1 billion price tag. The only thing you can do to get past that is to patent it. And that's their model of finding solutions for diseases. They don't want to look at nutrition. That's why doctors are not trained with hardly any nutrition in mind when they go to medical school. And then if you are trained in nutrition, you're given a bunch of garbage that's absolute nonsense. That's manipulating information to lie to people, to tell people that toxic vegetable oils, which are Frankenstein manufactured nonsense crap, are the best things you could put in your body for health. And so we have groups who have been misleading people for generations, and it's hard to roll back that groupthink overnight, but we're doing the best we can. I can tell you this, I have never had a topic which received more exciting interest from the radio listeners of this show, the podcast listeners, which are international, all over the world, Uganda, Australia, Indonesia, Ireland, whatever, listening to the show regularly. I have never gotten more feedback and excitement for any topic I've done on radio than when I talked about getting vegetable oils out of your life, how to find them, what are they, how to look for them, what they do to our bodies. That is the hot ticket. The second thing I get, of course, are questions about this new pandemic stuff. But the biggest, most excited interest I get is the vegetable oil topic. It can revolutionize our health when we understand the truth. And so the big deal is we got to understand that Google, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, they have forfeited their roles as voluntary market entities. They are working directly to silence and spread disinformation that challenges DC's lies, their wars, and their aggression against human life. They manipulate elections by messing with the Google search results. Just go look for Larry Elder search results, and you'll see everything you need to know about how lying and dubious and manipulative these entities are. And their outcomes lead to more state aggression on innocent life when they get the election results that they want. They are censoring life-saving science with coordinated disinformation, propaganda, and blackouts in a cartel-style manner. They are the equivalent of some private, so-called private industries providing factory support for Mussolini's state-planned economy. Would you have treated those corporate fascist factories in Italy like private companies or extensions of state intervention? I think the choice is clear. We've got to change our approach. If we're going to have these social media companies, if they're going to be extensions of government, then they will have to be applied the First Amendment standard to, which means everybody they've censored, throttled, deleted, all of that gets undone. Because they are, in fact, entities. They are like the factories for Italy during fascism. Private companies being handpicked by government, working together. You wouldn't say, oh, that factory's a free market entity. They're perfectly. No, they are making the products that are harming your neighborhood. And that's exactly what these companies are doing. And so they should be treated under the same First Amendment standard if they're going to be government policy executors. That's exactly what they're doing. Censoring reality, censoring science, not just about this pandemic. They censor science about anything that goes against their radical fringe ideology. Let's take a break and return live on A Neighbor's Choice. You can call in at 727-587-1040. That's 727-587-1040, or drop us a comment on our live stream. Back in a moment.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. It's a stressful process. There are attorneys in Tampa Bay that keep clients well-informed, creating less stress. That law firm is Catania. Personal injury law is defended with full disclosure. There is no guessing game. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents, the law firm of Catania will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims don't realize they have a claim for the loss until they talk to Catania. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to Catania.com. Over 28 years in practice. Catania, personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys. Catania, putting families first.
Office Tampa. Not attorney spokeswoman.
Who is your neighbor?
Dave and Wally are team drivers for Oakley Transport. One day, they came across a very serious accident on the highway. Some might pass on by, but Dave and Wally saw there was no time to waste. They jumped into action and saved 2 people's lives with moments to spare. That's the kind of courageous love we need more of today. It reflects the respected culture Oakley Transport develops with their driving professionals. CDLA licensed drivers. Join Oakley Transport today for a rewarding career. Visit oakleytransport.com. That's oakleytransport.com. Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck in a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLS ID 1492187. Equal housing lender.
A Neighbor's Choice returns. I'm your host, David Gronowski. We are live on radio. George on our comment stream says, don't forget Luxembourg. Well, we're glad to have Luxembourg listeners as well. He says, my only hope is what I strongly believe. Do not lie. It fires back always. Well, that's what the folks who are wannabe authoritarians, wannabe totalitarians, that's their whole game, is get people stuck in a house of mirrors, a house of lies, and they eventually tap out. They're scared. They've been taught since they're little kids, especially millennials. You know, they were always taught, I follow the science. I watch Bill Nye the Science Guy. I watch Jurassic Park. You know, these people, they get conditioned into this state where they feel like, well, to be smart, to be cool, I don't want to be considered a fundamentalist Christian or something. That's the stupid false binary that they are told they have to choose from. That's what low info people get. You get 2 options on everything, Coke or Pepsi. You get corn oil sludge or soybean oil sludge, right? You get garbage ice cream with seed oils in it or garbage ice cream with other seed oils in it. You get some like cartoonish, fundamentalist, Christian, weird doctrine versus some kind of follow the science cult of scientism. So that's what people are presented, that false dialectic their whole life. So they struggle to get out of it. And then these liars come in there and they put out all this misinformation. Remember, they've been lying and lying and lying and lying, saying there's no such thing basically as naturally acquired immunity. And then I saw, you know, we've seen the studies. All the studies keep coming out. All the science keeps coming out from top world-class scientists who are actually just good people. They just get work done, and they don't care about their careers or their voices or mouths being slandered through hell because of a bunch of soulless, corporatist, fascist punks who want to make a money off of people's fear and their illness. It's sick. And so what we have here is that we've got this battle between the truth, the light, versus those who want to swim in darkness. And when you swim in darkness, all you have is lies to sucker people into, to get them confused, to get them off their game, to feel isolated. People feel more isolated than ever before in recent times. That's why it's important for you. Spend time with your friends and family. Get back into local community. Go on a kayak trip. Go on a hike like Tucker Goodrich does. He does that every week. He's over there calculating all the damages of seed oils while he's climbing up rocks and mountains in Idaho. Right? Running from grizzly bears who do not eat seed oils unless they happen to come across vegetable oil-ridden snacks in some camper's bag. Get out and enjoy your life. Enjoy your life. Have joy in your heart. Be balanced mentally. Don't allow these people to rob you of your joy and your common brotherhood with your fellow neighbors and friends. Have your birthday party. That's what they hate. People who are stuck in misery, they want you to feel miserable too. That's why they had people snitching on people who were trying to have like backyard parties or a funeral or having wrestling matches in their front yard, having fun. People hate. They're like, I'm miserable. You must be miserable. We must all atone so that the gods of scientism will bestow with us magical gifts from on high. Stupid. Those magical gifts end up being, you've got to get your booster every frickin' 6 months eventually for you to come out the frickin' house. That's how these idiots want to take you down the path of. You don't want to go down there. Your kids don't deserve it. They don't deserve it. Grandkids don't deserve it. Nobody deserves that kind of miserable life. Then they'll want to put masks on dogs' necks. That's how stupid this psychosis has become. Stupid idiots, low info people. They don't know anything about science. These people are midwits or dimwits, whatever wits you want to call them. Their wits are not up to the par to deal with reality. So they need to sit down and the adults will come back into the room and we're going to take care of things because we actually have common sense. We have love. We have compassion. We have hearts of fire for liberty. And we're not going to allow these people to destroy our civilization. This is America. We're going to fight for our liberties. The whole world is watching. Do you actually care about what the founding fathers did? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You can't even pursue happiness if you have to stay in a state of stupor for the rest of your life, or these frickin' psychopaths take advantage of your fear and your desire to fit in and feel good and feel better than other people. They exploit those baser instincts that humans have so that they can have their moment in the sun. We've seen these kind of jacks since the dawn of time. As a commenter, my commenter says, it's a corporatocracy. Big business and the state are in cahoots, have been for the longest time. It's become more pronounced and even declared a virtue now in the war against COVID, hate speech, climate change, etc. Another, Michael says, referring to the social media sites, they're breaking the law by behaving like publishers when they should be platforms. I mean, we saw this today. ReclaimTheNet.org says Instagram disables the account of a grieving mother of U.S. Marine Lance Kareem Nikoy. Deleted her account because she was criticizing that feckless fool, Joe Biden. That's what those outlets are not free market entities. They are organs of government, and they need to be treated like government, which means First Amendment applies. They should not be able to ban anybody under the First Amendment because they are government agencies. I'm tired of this ruse that they're putting over people. Bunch of frickin' snakes. Back in a moment. Life brought to you by
weekday afternoons 4 to 6.
Our friends at Corporate Interest.
It's a neighbor's choice.
Who thinks that's science?
With David Gornosky.
Now, Humanity brought to you by your monthly booster product to being a human being. Rest of your life. Dentist level virology labs in CCP China will continually just mess around with stuff and ups if they cough.
The neighbor's choice.
We've got a new booster for you every moment of your life.
Weekday afternoons 4 to 6.
Who wants to live in that?
News Talk 1040.
Where's the left?
WHBO.
Come on, left. Wake up.
Facing Republican criticism that he broke a promise and left behind some Americans in Afghanistan when he ended the evacuations and the war yesterday, President Biden talking to the nation from the White House in the past hour.
I was not going to extend this forever war. And I was not extending a forever exit.
The U.S. helped evacuate 123,000 people from Afghanistan, the biggest airlift in history, says the president. A success. He says the U.S. will use diplomacy and leverage with allies to help anybody left who wants to get out. Citing a recent significant increase in Americans getting COVID shots, White House coronavirus response coordinator Jeff Zients.
As people across the country prepare for Labor Day weekend, it's critical that being vaccinated is part of their pre-holiday checklist.
Last week, 6 million Americans got a COVID shot, the biggest weekly total since July 5th. Search and rescue efforts continuing in parts of the Gulf Coast following Hurricane Ida. Chuck Severson, ABC News.
News Talk 1040, Tampa Bay weather forecast.
Good afternoon. I'm meteorologist Alan Archer at your News Talk 1040 WHBO Weather Center. Quiet this afternoon amidst partly sunny skies. Only a 10% chance of a stray thunder shower at 91. But then for tonight, it's a 30% late night thunder shower at 78. And then tomorrow, clouds up with a stronger 60% chance of increasing daytime storms, a high at just 85. I'm meteorologist Alan Archer, News Talk 1040 WHBO.
A Neighbor's Choice returns. So glad to be with you live. I'm your host, David Gronowski. You can call in at 727-587-1040. That's 727-587-1040. Or email us hello@aneighborschoice.com. Jack Posobiec is a reporter at Human Events. He says, excellent progress, but the work goes on, referring to a new poll out of Pew Research that says Republicans with some trust in national media. It was 70% in 2016. Now it's 35% in 2021. That number needs to be a lot lower. I agree, because there's not much to trust about these dubious outlets, the way they're acting. They are not media outlets. They are PR firms for very fringe, ridiculous, and dangerous ideas that harm people in real time. They're trying to mess with our understanding of science. They're trying to mess with our understanding of reality. Like you said, the guy said, like he said, if you want to see what they do, let's type in Larry Elder right now, live on air, what he is being reported on Google. You type in his name, and you see a bunch of stuff: ABC, NBC, ABC, New York Times, CNN, LA Times, all running PR firm campaigns against him. So you do get his website, you get Wikipedia, which is a left-wing, corporate, fascist-friendly platform. But, that's what you see here. And again, that doesn't mean you have to agree with Larry Elder and everything or whatever, but the point is he's speaking out against biomedical, tyrannical policies. Majority of Hispanics in California want him, not that punk Gavin Newsom. That loser looks like a villain from some Batman movie or something. I mean, that's actually too much of a compliment. He's just a low life looking guy, and talks like it, acts like it, and so they're pulling out all the stops, calling them every name in the book because they're stupid people. The left, they don't have these white neoliberals, these corporatists. They have nothing intellectually but chaos, because their business model is if people are against each other and divided, then they can consolidate power. Because how do you numb out when you're in a state of anger and aggression all the day? You buy stuff, you stay in debt, and you watch gobbledygook nonsense media telling you that the planet's going to melt any second. Meanwhile, they do nothing to actually promote clean energy. So it's like on both sides, both their narrative is false of hysteria, but also their solutions to try to have clean energy, which I want clean energy, but I don't have to agree with their reasons for why we need it. But even their solutions for clean energy is just garbage. You know, that's why I'm tired of holding back and trying to, we just don't have time to hold back. We have to tell the truth. Rob Schneider says on Saturday Night Live, referring to Saturday Night Live, much late night comedy is less about being funny and more about indoctrination by comedic imposition. People aren't really laughing at it as much as cheering on the rhetoric. It's no longer resembles a comedy show. It's more like some kind of liberal Klan meeting. And you used to be able to relax and enjoy life in a civic space, in a neutral space outside of active, aggressive political indoctrination. That's how you know you're dealing with wannabe totalitarians, because they can't stop injecting their stupid, failed religion of state worship with victim narratives, selling it to you. They can't stop shoving it down everywhere you go. And that's why people are turning off the channels of these garbage programs. At the same time, they're a little slower to get their kids out of these failing government schools where the worst propaganda is happening. They say to themselves, well, I need that daycare service. But there are other ways to get that daycare service. You can have micro schools, homeschool co-ops. If you live in places like Florida and other states, there are ways to get funding for your private school curriculum. There are many different methods now available so that there's no excuse to stay in these failing, disastrous, torturous government schools that look like the Stanford prison experiment. By the way, that's what's going on right now in this pandemic hysterical power grab, is a real-time example of the Stanford prison experiment. People think they can put on a robe or a garb or a costume of some sort, and that gives them magical power to be absolutely awful to their neighbor. Here's a story in Tampa Free Press. It looks like it says, a poll shows that Fauci fatigue. Fewer than half of Americans have a favorable view of Fauci. A new poll shows that more than half of Americans have had it with Dr. Fauci, allegedly the nation's leading infectious disease expert. To 42% say they view Fauci was unfavorable, 29% holding very unfavorable position. 14% are undecided. Democrats had 72% of favorable opinion on Fauci, only 23% of Republicans, and just 32% of those outside the major parties agreed with those Democrats. So that's the sad thing. But unfortunately, Rasmussen shows 50% of respondents, more than those who actually like him, still agree with him that COVID restrictions should continue until next spring. That's ridiculous. So how far do these fools want to go when they say that? 50% of the country wants to do this. Do they want the Australian style where you get 1 hour out of your house a day? You have to wear a mask while you drink a beer by yourself outside of the house or something? That's what Fauci wants. Do they really want to go there, or are they that clueless? It's a shame that 50% of Americans in the land of the free still want these stupid restrictions, even though there's no science to back up their narratives. That's why the inventor of the mRNA technology that I've interviewed myself, Dr. Robert Malone, MD, continues to challenge their narrative with great success. He pointed out today natural immunity is by far stronger than immunity conferred by the products that they're telling you have to have. And he linked to a video from The Hill TV channel. I mean, they're left of center, but they're actually honest journalists talking about the bombshell report. We've cited it too. 76,000 people in Israel studied. Tel Aviv University backs up what other studies have been consistently showing, but your garbage trash media and your garbage trash social media cartel actively goes against the facts as brilliant, intelligent scientists contradict their nonsense scam. The scam is that there's only one way to solve this thing, and it is obedience, and it is one product, and that's the scam. And lockdowns and all this forced, violent, aggressive stuff. I have no problem if people want to take whatever products they want. Never, ever have a problem with that. You do what you want to do. But I have a problem when people start trying to manipulate people who can't fight back, especially when it's kids, which Fauci wants to mandate this product for kids, even babies 12 years. He said 12 and under. He wants everybody to be forced to have that to go to school. And he says it's the same as all the other vaccines we've always mandated. No, it's not. You frickin' liar, you fool. Low info loser. You shameful, pitiful little person here. Those products, 10 to 15 years at least, if not longer, studies before they had mandates for them to go to government school. Which you shouldn't be in government school in the first place, the point is, right? But the point is there's no reason to be mandating this stuff. And to put it on to kids who can't fight back, who don't know what to do to protect themselves from this nonsense, that's a moral outrage, ethical disaster. Daniel Kotson says, Israel announced today that vaccine passports are no longer valid 6 months after the date of the last shot. Anyone who thinks that vaccine passports are just temporary measures to get us through the pandemic might want to think again. How can this not be? This needs to be 80% of America needs to be rejecting this. That's the more likely number I want to see. 80%. And it needs to be media voices speaking out, scientists speaking out. We saw today 2 FDA officials resigned as this decision on what they're going to do and shill about the booster deal looms. So people are, I guess, quitting in protest, but will they speak out? We need whistleblowers. We need people with courage and guts who care about more important things than attaboys and TV appearances on CNN, which gets like lower ratings than, late night Hallmark movie reruns on the channels. Hallmark Channel. This is a garbage loser news site. News channel. Nobody watches it. 25,000 people? It's pathetic. Why are they so excited to get attaboys from these losers? These failing has-beens, never going to be again media outlets. We need people coming out who know information, who can be whistleblowers in the FDA, CDC, NIH to come out and tell the truth about the origins of this virus so they can't keep sweeping that obvious reality under the rug, about the booster campaign, about the mandates, about the failure of the lockdowns, the whole deal. I don't care if they censor. We're going to beat their censorship. We're going to build a better network of truth and love and dignity and open discourse. We're not going to allow them to win. If they win on this, all of your discourse is done for. It won't just be isolated to this pandemic, and it still isn't. Like we said, Instagram's deleting the mother of one of the Marines that was murdered in Afghanistan guarding the airport deal because of Biden's botched pullout. They're deleting her criticism. You can't. These are fascists. They don't want you to criticize the president when he gets your own son killed. If that doesn't tell you where they want to censor everything. It's not just about your health, which is your most important thing. If you don't know what can be life-saving and helping you, if you don't know about vegetable oils and how toxic they are because of your garbage media outlets, they lie and put all this misinformation out there. That's what they do. They do the big tobacco scam. Big tobacco puts out all these studies that drown out the truth about their products. That's what big food does. Big pharma does. Why are we so silly to think that that kind of disinformation, sending out information with media outlets, little acolytes that are getting advertising dollars. And like Peter Quinonez said, I heard him on a show, which you should check out, the Free Man Beyond the Wall podcast, right? And he was saying just recently, he was saying, it's always funny when you watch PBS or one of those programs that push for war all the time and you see a sponsor, Sunday morning show, sponsored by Raytheon, sponsored by some military company. And you're like, who watching these shows wants to buy a missile or whatever they have to offer? Well, that's how they wash their money. They put that money into these companies so to get them to give the favorable coverage. And they do their job as PR firms, and then they put a little ad out and say, well, that's what we paid for, the advertisement. It's shameful, right? We know it's shameful. And the Republicans are just as problematic on this. They've been the worst about war for so long, but they've cleaned up their act, at least on their voter side. But their politicians, most of them, are using this withdrawal as an excuse to try to change the narrative and make a more George W. Bush failed globalist foreign policy back on the menu. So stupid. These people never learn. They all should be fired, completely fired. And we need to return power back to our local communities. Take a break and we'll be back live on A Neighbor's Choice. You can call in at 727-587-1040 if you have a question or a comment on any of the topics we've explored thus far. Back in a second.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. For Catania will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims don't realize they have a claim for the loss until they talk to Catania. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to Catania.com. Over 28 years in practice. Catania, personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys. Catania, putting families first.
Office Tampa. Not attorney spokeswoman.
David Gronowski here. Let me tell you about a man named Gabriel. Every day, Gabriel puts on his boots and drives across America to make sure our store shelves stay stocked with the food people count on. See, Gabriel served our country overseas. He knows that America stands for freedom, quality, and caring for others the way we would like to be treated. That's why when Gabriel saw food shelves getting low during the pandemic, he hit the road as a driver with Oakley Transport. In the land of the free, where no one should go hungry, we need heroes like Gabriel to help keep America fed. CDLA driving professionals. Join Oakley Transport today. Keep America fed. Visit oakleytransport.com or call them today at 1-877-8-TANKER. That's 1-877-8-TANKER.
A Neighbor's Choice returns. A Neighbor's Choice is also available on podcast, by the way. If you look up our podcast, search for David Granosky on your favorite podcast platform, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Podbean, whatever. We're on pretty much all of them, Spotify, and you just search for David Granosky. You'll be able to find the show where you can subscribe there, write a review, and that helps more people find the show as we grow this show as a bulwark against the nonsense. We're going to lead the path towards progress, neighbor to neighbor. And that means building a media platform and an ecosystem that's independent of nonsense. We don't want to be beholden to advertisers that shill for garbage pharma products and garbage food products and just stupid has-been corporate mealy mouth trash that nobody wants. We're going to build a platform that's independent and robust and multimedia. Someone asks, is olive oil okay? And another commenter answers, Jason says, real olive oil is not as bad as most other seed oils from what I have gathered, sunflower, canola, vegetable oil, etc. So olive oil is not a seed oil. It's a fruit oil. They get it from the actual fruit of the olive plant. So it's a natural oil. Seed oils, you don't squeeze soybean and get little fat on it like you can with an olive mashed down or whatever, right? So olive oil is a monounsaturated fat, which means it's a natural fat and it's a healthy fat. The problem is, as has been pointed out in the comment stream on our YouTube stream, that a lot of the different olive oils sold in the stores and at grocery stores today are not, they're not actually pure olive oil. They're, some of the import products, especially I've heard, can have other oils added to them, which are problematic, to say the least, especially if you've been eating them for decades and we've got a pandemic and you need to take care of your metabolic health. So, another commenter says, we have some great organic Italian and Greek olive oil. It's fantastic. I wonder about sunflower oil. My Ukrainian family seems to do fine with that. Sunflower oil is one of the highest amounts, has some of the highest linoleic acid, which is the worst type of, fatty acid in terms of these vegetable oils that you can consume. So I would highly avoid sunflower oil in most of the forms that I've been informed about. It's a high linoleic acid containing fat. So stay away from sunflower oil. There are high oleic acid, which oleic acid is the type of monounsaturated fat, I believe, that is in olive oil. There are some sunflower oils that say they're high oleic, but I've heard that those are not quite reliable as well. So it's best to just avoid that when, especially there's better tasting oils out there. Again, ghee, butter, coconut oil. Again, if you can get real good olive oil, that's California, unfortunately, they've had a lot of problems, but they've got their standards on olive oil purity seem to be pretty legit. So if it says 100% olive oil from California, should be pretty good to go on terms of purity. Unfortunately, another thing that gets diluted sometimes is avocado oil, but avocado oil is another heavy monounsaturated fat that is better than the vegetable oils. Again, if you squeeze a avocado, you see the fat. That's how you know it's not a seed oil. Seed oils, there are unnatural extractions that are not in anything that your ancestors would have ever eaten. So that's just something to keep in mind here. I always like the questions. Again, I get more interest from the seed oil topic, but I'm just someone, I can't focus on one topic alone. I like to talk about physics. I like to talk about culture, anthropology, foreign policy. We do the whole thing here because I want to have a well-rounded approach to inform myself. And so I try to do the kind of program that I want there to be on the market, that I wish was on the market, as a customer of news and information sources myself. Tim Dillon, the stand-up comedian, he said, some of the Marines who died followed me, and that's insane to think we put them in that position for so long so that a vice president at General Dynamics could buy another house. And I think he touches on something that both the left and the right and independents have had enough of. We're sick and tired of these liars. They have discredited themselves. And I can't believe that people like Fauci, who want us to live in a frickin' totalitarian state where we're not allowed to go out but 1 hour a day, because he envies the Australian model. He wants that. He wants that. 1 hour a day out of your house. You're in house arrest in Australia, in those places where they're doing that. Mandated QR codes to get into grocery stores and stuff. And that guy covets that. Why is his opinion rating half and half still? It should be 70% once people, maybe they don't know, that's the thing. Media covers for his tale so much, constantly selling him as your God because they're superstitiously devoted to the worship of the state. And they don't care about sacrificing people. That's why you hear these stories of people, New Zealand Health Ministry links death to Pfizer vaccine, according to Mercury News. The board said the deadly myocarditis was probably due to the vaccination that someone took. You have a story, we get these stories a lot, but they're not considered a tragedy because it's in the service of their gods, the gods of scientism, the gods of monopoly government, the gods of people who want to run your life for the rest of your life, using this as their entry point into your life, and the gods of big pharma and big profits. So it's time for us to turn the page on these false gods. And the way we do that is we destroy their myths in real time, break their myths apart, because once their myths are gone, they have nothing to stand on. The myth is more important than even their coercion. The coercion is awful, but their myth is what sells people on going along with their coercive policies. So we must destroy their myths, the myths that justify that it's okay that one man die so that the whole nation might not perish because of this fear-mongering and nonsense. There are real-world solutions that can be used right now that would save hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people's lives from this pandemic, as well as from all the other chronic illnesses that people are dying from at higher rates every year. But your garbage, low-info media doesn't want you to know about it. So we're going to build a new media that's better than ever before, and this is what it looks like, day by day, coming together, you and I and our community, building information, sharing resources. You guys send me so many great studies, so many great papers, so many great ideas, guest suggestions. It's hard to keep track of all of them. You keep sending them in because you see I put on the guests. All the guests that you guys recommend, you email me and stuff, I put them on my show. And we have fantastic conversations with paradigm-shifting Galileos. So we're going to build energy too cheap to meter. We're going to build transmutation of rare earth minerals from recyclable materials. We're going to have solutions for diseases that don't require patents that will break your bank to afford in the healthcare system or the government system. We're going to build this future together. We're going to build an educational exit out of the failed government monopolies of education. And when we do, they will never be able to put back their Humpty Dumpty back together again that is built on their monopoly of misinformation and miseducation. That's what we're going to do. And it's going to take you and I coming together, sharing the data, sharing the news reports, building the news media we want. All of us are required to participate in this new media conversation. And together, we will make the world a beautiful place, a place that we said we fought hard for our liberties. They were challenged and we won. That's what we're going to fight. When we come back, we're going to hear from a restaurant owner in New York City fighting back against their tyrannical passports to get in to eat. I'm David Gronowski. Email me hello@aneighborschoice.com. We'll stay tuned in just a moment for hour 2 with these exclusive interviews.
Your home for news, talk, and information. 1040 WHBO Pinellas Park. Tampa Bay's all new News Talk 1040.
It's the only way I get news.
From ABC News, I'm Chuck Sievertson. Facing criticism, President Biden talking to the nation just in the past hours, explaining why the evacuations from Afghanistan ended yesterday.
The president saying his full Afghanistan withdrawal was a campaign promise he kept.
I refuse to send another generation of America's sons and daughters to fight a war It should have ended long ago.
President Biden praising U.S. forces who evacuated 5,500 Americans and more than 100,000 Afghans, and insisted the U.S. would have lost many more lives if he'd extended the stay. Andy Field, ABC News, Washington.
The president was partly responding to a group of Republican critics who spoke earlier, including House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy.
Never in my lifetime would I ever believe America would have an administration knowingly make a decision to leave Americans behind.
The president says the U.S. will continue to help more people who are at risk to leave the country. Rescue and search efforts continue in the Gulf Coast. Following Hurricane Ida, Louisiana's governor says it could be weeks before full electricity is restored to some. This decision because of the COVID surge.
Google is pushing out its date for employees to return to offices until at least January 10th of 2022 now. And even then, that's a fluid date. Googlers, as they're called, are told they will be expected to return once it's deemed safe in their country. They'll be given 30 days notice. Google says it also wants to prioritize the well-being of its employees, so it will have 2 global days off between now and the end of the year to allow Googlers to rest and recharge. Alex Stone, ABC News.
Over 3 years after she was indicted on fraud and conspiracy charges, jury selection started for Elizabeth Holmes. Central question is whether she knew her medical blood testing technology didn't work when she and her company were selling it. You're listening to ABC News.
Ad paid for by CompleteCar.com. This is a special alert to all Americans who own a vehicle with less than 200,000 miles with an auto warranty about to expire or with no warranty coverage at all. Due to the COVID crisis, we are announcing a low-cost extended service plan that is now available to the public to save any driver out-of-pocket expenses on auto repairs. Call now to find out how you can pay nothing for auto repairs. Yes, you heard that correctly. Pay nothing for auto repairs. An open phone line has been established for all drivers to call for a free quick quote. Call 800-549-1980. Now. Drivers who are covered by this auto protection will not have to pay for a covered repair bill again. This auto coverage is at an all-time low, much lower than what dealerships are charging. Additionally, drivers who activate this auto coverage today will also receive free roadside assistance, free towing, and free rental car at no additional cost. Call for your free quick quote today. 800-549-1985. 800-549-1985. What do you have to lose? Again, 800-549-1985.
The fast surge of the COVID Delta variant across the U.S., putting more people in hospitals and under-vaccinated areas, has many restaurants getting together contingency plans, says ABC's Sherry Preston.
Places like McDonald's, which opened indoor seating areas this summer, are now putting plans in place in case they have to close again. Honolulu, the latest city requiring vaccines or negative COVID tests to go inside bars, restaurants, museums, and theaters.
Trying to go around the governor.
Still smarting over Trump's loss, Michigan Republicans announced a ballot drive that would allow them to enact their voting restrictions without Governor Gretchen Whitmer's approval. She has vowed to veto similar bills pending in the Republican-controlled legislature. Supporters have got 6 months to get 340,000 signatures to make it happen.
ABC's Richard Cantu nabbed.
Pakistan's counterterrorism units raided an ISIS hideout in the restive southwest. Suicide belts and assault rifles were confiscated.
ABC's Tom Rivers. The raid set off a shootout that killed 11 militants, police say. Nice to meet you. This is what I look like. That's the idea behind a line of business cards printed with the lower half of the bearer's face. It's the half often covered by a mask in these COVID times. It's the idea of Japan's Nagaya Printing Company smiling calling cards. Its main business is printing flyers and catalogs. As sales dropped due to the pandemic, they wondered what else they could do. 12 orders so far. This is ABC News.
The pandemic's reminded us we live in a sea of airborne germs that can assault us with every breath. Your nose is the body's first line of defense by helping filter out allergens, bacteria, and viruses before they reach your lungs. So how do you clean your nose? Navage uses powered suction to flush out mucus and germs that cause congestion, or worse, can make you sick. Over 2 million people use Navage to breathe better, sleep deeper, snore less, and feel healthier without drugs. Go to Navage.com or find Navage at Walgreens, CVS, Rite Aid, Bed Bath, and Target.
Chuck Severson, ABC News.
News Talk 1040, Tampa Bay weather forecast.
Good afternoon. I'm meteorologist Ellen Archer at your News Talk 1040 WHBO Weather Center. Quiet this afternoon amidst partly sunny skies. Only a 10% chance of a stray thunder shower at 91. But then for tonight, it's a 30% late night thunder shower at 78. And then tomorrow, clouds up with a stronger 60% chance of increasing daytime storms. a high of just 85. I'm meteorologist Alan Archer, News Talk 1040 WHBO.
Who is your neighbor? Dave and Wally are team drivers for Oakley Transport. One day, they came across a very serious accident on the highway. Some might pass on by, but Dave and Wally saw there was no time to waste. They jumped into action and saved 2 people's lives with moments to spare. That's the kind of courageous love we need more of today. It reflects the respected culture Oakley Transport develops with their driving professionals. CDLA licensed drivers. Join Oakley Transport today for a rewarding career. Visit oakleytransport.com. That's oakleytransport.com.
This portion of the upcoming amazing broadcast is brought to you by the law firm of Catania & Catania, award-winning personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys, serving Tampa Bay families for over 28 years.
Central Florida, you're listening to the most electrifying show in media. A Neighbor's Choice. I'm your host, your neighbor, David Gronowski. So glad to be with you live for another hour of our broadcast. We were about to have a restaurant owner from New York City come on and tell us what it's going on. He's trying to fight back against the fascist vaccine mandate that this city has callously put in place so that people who even get one of the shots, but they have an anaphylactic response or something else, so they medically cannot be cleared to get the second one, apparently, they're stuck in limbo land where they're not allowed to have a normal life, and they can't even keep their job in many cases because of these jerks. We were supposed to have a restaurant owner. He backed out at the last second. I don't know if they're being pressured or fear is sweeping that aggressive city with a bunch of authoritarians running it into the madness that it's in. But we will continue to pursue having voices on the front lines. We're going to hear from somebody later this week from Los Angeles who's going to give us an update on what's going on from the local perspective for that city's disastrous mandates for not only restaurants and gyms and bars and theaters and entertainment venues, but also even retail stores, which would really cripple a lot of people's ability to do anything. So we're going to hear from a local perspective on that situation later in the week. But we want to hear from voices around the country and around the world about how they're dealing. We've heard a lot of people come in and give us eyewitness perspective about what's going on in France, what's going on in Australia. And so we want to continue to reach out to you. So if you're someone that can share, whether you're a business owner or someone just as a regular person who has a perspective on some of these ridiculous experimental laws that they're trying to test out on people, then we want to hear from you on this show. So this is what A Neighbor's Choice is about. It's about hearing from neighbors and what they're doing to navigate the choices they have to make. Holger Hillebrand from, I guess this is with Norway, says 10,000 reports of possible side effects are unread from the products that they're running out over in Norwegian Medicines Agency for this pandemic. The Norwegian's medicine agency is now hiring more people to investigate the reports. To date, a total of 25,044 reports about possible side effects after these products have been received. The Norwegian Medicines Agency is now hiring many more caseworkers to handle all the reports. Extrapolated to the population of Germany, that would be around 400,000 reports on possible side effects, of which over 150,000 have not yet been read. That's from Norway. So we're getting different international perspectives because we're all in this together, this attempt to politically take over our liberties worldwide by a bunch of greedy manipulators who take advantage of crises in a very callous way. Remember I told you that story? Here's the story. BioPharmaDive.com reports top FDA vaccine officials to leave agency as decision on COVID-19 boosters looms. Marion Gruber and Phil Krause, 2 veteran vaccine reviewers, are unexpectedly departing at a critical time. They're 2 of the top vaccine reviewers, and they're leaving the agency. The regulator confirmed on Tuesday. So it makes you wonder, why are they leaving? And will people finally ever speak out about some of the nonsense that these agencies with revolving door relationships with the products that they're telling us we have to take or else? So dumb. Rich points out a comment that is worth considering. He says the legacy media would have you believe that Trump should have been removed from office, while Biden's death numbers are actually worse than the exact same day last year. And he shows a chart showing that, you know, if this was under Trump, they'd be saying every death count is on him. That's what they got their, you know, religious sycophants on the left to believe. Every death, they said, was Trump killing those people. But now that their little my guy is in, these people on cue shut their mouths because the TV told them to shut their mouth based on the narratives they're selling them. And so now on cue, they don't even talk anything about it. Now they talk about horse paste because they're stupid media owned by Big Pharma. They know that this product that they're attacking as horse paste is also a human product too. They know that it got a Nobel Prize. They talk about Stop Asian Hate, and yet they're slandering a product that was a Nobel Prize winning scientist. He got the prize because he developed the product. That's how it's been widely used. 6 billion people using ivermectin around the world. You look at countries in Africa where the product is used regularly because of parasite problems, and its antiviral effects seem to have made those case rates really low in those countries. Go look at the chart. Go look at the graphic. Go look at the data. That's something that CNN doesn't do. They don't tell you to look at data. They tell you to shut up. Remember when they had WikiLeaks coming out and they said, you can't look at these emails that show Hillary Clinton laughing it up with Wall Street, Hillary Clinton saying this and that. It's for us to look at it. They hate you looking at facts. They want you docile and stupid and aggressive and you know, hungering for their sponsors' products. Newsweek reports Memphis teen football player who died of COVID was vaccinated, mom says. A 16-year-old football player. This is an example of the sacrifice that shouldn't have been happening. This government and media have been pressuring everybody, including 6-month-old babies, if possible, to get this product as soon as they can. And here we have a 16-year-old football player. You know, they trot out every time there's somebody, especially like a talk radio host who dies of COVID, and they say they didn't get the products, you know. They always like make these stories. And they do it in a tone like, oh, man, we're going to, you know. But here's the deal. We're not going to do it that way. We weep at the thought of anybody dying unnecessarily. Life is precious. We don't use like they do where they laugh and joke. And again, it's a cult. Like Michael Malice said, and I quoted him at the beginning of the show, where he said, these people are more afraid about catching it than they are actually dealing with the disease in many cases, because they will feel they've been taught by their lying media that they're somehow not a good person if they get it. That's something that was always part of ancient societies, if you look at anthropological studies. That you had these pandemics, you had these crises, you had these plagues, you had these famines, and you had to perform certain rituals of purity, certain rituals of in-group conformity. And if you didn't do those things, you would be considered impure and unclean or contaminating or bringing in the wrath of the gods. They're doing the same exact thing. It's the same social structure in their minds. It just has modern ideological terms, but it's the same exact thing going on today. These people create a herd mentality, and they believe I'm a good person if I put on 5 masks while I'm cutting the grass in the backyard. I'm a good person if I take the product. Remember when the media was telling them be skeptical of the products if Orange Man Bad is reelected, because he's the one that's been accelerating them in such a quick and dangerous way, they said. So they just go on cue to each narrative which suits their interests. And there are people who buy into this stuff are in such a stupor, they don't even remember or are able to self-reflect on how contradictory all of the ups and downs and flip-flops of the narrative are. So it's important for us to just keep exposing the myth, keep bringing people back to their senses, keep bringing people back to their humanity, keep bringing people back to their empathy. And that's why we are sad at any story like this. But we report these stories because we're not going to allow the media tell us that we have to pressure children into taking products when all the studies show there's no reason to be pressuring kids. The one thing you should be doing is getting your kids off of vegetable oils, but not a single shameful media outlet in the corporate cadre will do that. And the evidence is right there, so there's no excuse. People act like they're your gods about what you're supposed to do for your health, and they won't even tell you the number one thing you could do to help your kids and yourself is to never touch those vegetable oils. And I get comments, people saying, well, their grandma lived to be 96 and they ate vegetable oils. Look, you can find all kinds of flukes all day long, but the fact remains that when you eat these vegetable oils, they are the things. We can show you the mechanisms of what they're doing to our mitochondria, what they're doing to our insulin, what they're doing to inflammation, what they're doing to oxidation in our body, what they're doing to our hormone regulation, what they're doing for our heart disease, what they're doing for all these stuff. It's there. And we report it every day. And we bring the scientists and the researchers and the doctors on the show to unpack this data. But some people, and I'm not saying my audience, but some people don't get on board with something until they see it wrapped in a shiny bow on their TV hack news outlet, because they believe that power might makes right. And so they see CNN's shiny, glitzy cameras and they say that has power, therefore they are right. And that's how some people who are primed for totalitarianism, that's how they function. You just give them a crisis and you see it come alive in them. And that's a shame. There's always going to be a certain percentage of the population in any human society that's going to do that. But it's up for leaders. It's up to the artists, the thinkers, the engineers, the preachers, the scholars, the researchers, the nuclear scientists, the doctors, the lawyers. It's up to the people who are going to guide people, and the entrepreneurs especially, to lead people out of this stupor. But going back to this Newsweek story, 16-year-old football player, Memphis, Tennessee, was vaccinated against COVID-19, died from the virus over the weekend. Quintina Bucker said her son, Azorian Tatum, had asthma and was vaccinated. She said Tatum attended high school, was healthy at the start of the academic year, but suspects he contracted the virus at school. He wasn't wheezing. He wasn't coughing. He was just happy-go-lucky. He was at school for 3 days, and he just drastically got sick. It's unbelievable. It's horrible. But they don't want to talk about early treatment options. They don't want to talk about getting people's health preventatively in the right shape. And it's a horrific tragedy. But we can stop it. You can stop it right now. You're not powerless. You have all the power in your hands. You don't have to be powerless. You can do something about it. You can take care of your health, take care of your family's health, get them out of government schools, get out of government colleges, get out of debt, live within your means, because the economic problems are coming much faster. And that will make things even worse. But that doesn't have to be bad for people who prepare, for people who are faithful, for people who are wise, for people who know that you should store up, and not store up in unstable currencies, but store up in things that have real value, land and gold, silver. If you like those crypto things, have at it. But don't put all your eggs in one gimmick. Let's take a quick break and return. We'll get back to you in just a moment, live on A Neighbor's Choice. You can call in at 727-587-1040 or write a comment, as many of you are doing, on our live stream, and we'll get to them in a moment.
David Gronowski here. Let me tell you about a man named Gabriel. Every day, Gabriel puts on his boots and drives across America to make sure our store shelves stay stocked with the food people count on. See, Gabriel served our country overseas. He knows that America stands for freedom, quality, and caring for others the way we would like to be treated. That's why when Gabriel saw food shelves getting low during the pandemic, he hit the road as a driver with Oakley Transport. In the land of the free, where no one should go hungry, we need heroes like Gabriel to help keep America fed. CDLA driving professionals. Join Oakley Transport today. Keep America fed. Visit oakleytransport.com or call them today at 1-877-8-TANKER. That's 1-877-8-TANKER.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. Stressful process. There are attorneys in Tampa Bay that keep clients well informed, creating less stress. That law firm is Catania. Personal injury law is defended with full disclosure. There is no guessing game. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents, the law firm of Catania will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims don't realize they have a claim for the loss until they talk to Catania. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to catania.com. Over 28 years in practice. Catania, personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys. Catania, putting families first.
Office Tampa.
Not attorney spokeswoman.
Are you ready to transform your career? Jess Smith was too. She was stuck on a job that was controlling her life, consuming her free time, and offering little opportunity for growing her pay. Then she found FinTech Mortgage Association, and she never looked back. FinTech Mortgage Association makes home lending simple, and they take care of home buyers like family. Using technology to make everyone's life easier, FinTech Mortgage Association equips each of their loan solutions architects with the tools they need to build a career with a schedule they control, a product they can take pride in, and an earning potential that is life-changing. Unleash your true potential. Join FinTech Mortgage Association. Visit finmay.com. That's FINMAE.com. You're in charge now. NMLS ID 1492187. Equal housing lender.
Content is king. Millennials only shop on social. You've heard it all before. But how about creating a solid strategy based in real consumer insights that will move your business forward? That's where we come in. Hi, I'm Jeff Philbin, Director of Business Strategy at Shafino Lee. Our advertising and media agency has been in Tampa for nearly 3 decades, delivering strategic branding experiences that deliver immediate results. Let's connect at shafinolee.com and begin your journey towards real impact today.
Neighbor's Choice returns. Let's look at some of the comments you guys have been sending in. David, you are totally right about fighting against the theocratic dictatorial pronouncements of the COVID religious vaccine cult who believe they have omnipotent insights into what we should take. Thank you. Another comment, it says, mimetic groupthink is for losers. Don't be a loser, be a neighbor. Jason says, avoid the Borg like being in an episode of The Walking Dead. It's kind of true, you know. And look, I know it can happen even on the anti-establishment perspective, of course. You get all kinds of errors along the way. But when you see all of, you know, society's corporations, chains, social media, you know, everybody get on board with the same groupthink, that's when you know you're in a totalitarian environment. That's what North Korea looks like. Everybody touting the same nonsense because they feel like they have to, because that's the party line, or else they're canceled from reality, canceled from their job, canceled from normal life. That is not a healthy place. We must break through this and snap people out of the psychosis. Aussie Girl, a commenter on our stream, says, unfortunately, hearing something reported on TV makes it legitimate for most people. alternative sources of information are often not seen as being a credible source. It's true. That's why some people, all they got to see is the New York Times said it, and that's all they have to believe. That's because the media used to be the priestly caste. That's where they evolved from. America got used to this spirit where we had a free press that would challenge government power, expose lies that led to wars and corruption and shady corporate practices. But that was a novelty inherited by the Christian tradition, which subverts power structures, just as Jesus was a prophetic critique on his power authority figures in his time. The media imitates that through the ages, thousands of years later, and provides a challenge to the groupthink of their time. But we're losing that because we've abandoned the principles of the personhood revolution of Jesus. We've abandoned the idea that the human is sacred, that lying is never okay, that violence is never okay, that thou shalt not murder is something you can justify if Dick Cheney tells you to go to war for his buddies. We have lost the way, right? And so we've had to get our principles back, and from that we can build back better than ever before. And they can take their Ready Player One little metaverse and stick it for all I care. Those folks, like, you see the stories they're talking about. Facebook wants to create a metaverse. Give me a break. This stuff, these people are going to jump the shark. They already have. It just takes a while, I guess. Washington Post reported a day ago, big tech wants to build the metaverse. What on earth does that mean? They want to put you in virtual reality 24/7, where you're eating seed oil sludge, probably on some kind of equipment to keep you breathing, starting at a young age, and you're staying in a virtual reality world. It's like a nightmare. These people are disgusting. They have no conscience, apparently. They just want to create nonsense, nihilistic escape. Aren't you excited about the day when Mark Zuckerberg will be out of business for all his ideas? That'd be great to see him just another failed business person. You know, it can happen to DeLorean. He created the DeLorean Motor Company. It could happen to Mark Zuckerberg. Wouldn't that be great? Not to personally have a personal problem with him, but he's doing so many disastrous, horrible things to set humanity back with his money. It'd be great to see him in the same shoes as a DeLorean type person. TheHill.com reports, Walensky says now is the time to tackle gun violence. So now the CDC, Rochelle Walensky, the director, says it's time that they want to use their agency to go against the right to own a gun. That's the thing with these lawless fools. They want to use a Center for Disease Control to shove in gun control. And that dovetails with another story we heard where folks on Capitol Hill, progressive Democrats, America's Voice.news reports, progressive Democrats urge Biden to oust Powell, revamp the Fed over climate and racial justice concerns. So they want the Federal Reserve, which is a handmaiden of giant corporate power, to dress it up a little bit with some token rhetoric for climate change and racial justice. It's the dumbest thing you've ever heard, right? The reason why we have pollution at the rates we have is because governments are the biggest polluters in the world, and they're crony capitalists, and their seed oil sludge manufacturing produces some of the most pollution we've ever had. And who prints the money for these people to get all their money? The Federal Reserve. But they don't know how to think like that. They just want to put on a token bumper sticker slogan and say, well, the Fed's now going to print trillions of dollars for racial justice issues, which means electing people like Joe Biden with 50 years of incarcerating people and spent 50 years bombing people of color all over the world, and then botches Trump's plan to withdraw and tries to take credit for it like he's a peacekeeper when all he did was botch the one thing, leaving people behind, leaving dogs behind, leaving equipment of the finest expensive quality to these people to use to fortify themselves. Stupidest blunder you'd ever see. So who's going to listen to these people? It's amazing that people do. It's amazing. They have such little joy or something that they have to listen to these miserable people. We'll take a break. Be back. Stay with us. A Neighbor's Choice in just a moment. We'll return.
Weekdays, noon to 2.
Folks, this is pathetic.
It's the Jimmy Fallon Show.
It's pathetic.
Fox across America.
I don't care who you vote for. I am not saying this as a Republican. I'm saying this as an American, damn it.
Fox across America with Jimmy Fallon.
When we are told by our leadership that the Taliban's leadership is the one calling the shots on American civilians, it is disgraceful.
The all-new
News Talk 1040 WHBO.
A resolute President Biden defending his decision to end the war in Afghanistan.
I was not going to extend this forever war. And I was not extending a forever exit.
Mr. Biden says the United States must learn from our mistakes in Afghanistan and other long-running conflicts. Utility crews are working around the clock trying to restore service to hundreds of thousands of customers in Louisiana who have been without electricity and in many cases gas since Hurricane Ida. Ramsey Green is infrastructure chief for the city of New Orleans.
We can get power to this city, but we may not be able to get it to your house immediately. Once that transmission is fixed and once that generation is available.
Some places may not have power for up to a month. Idaho Governor Brad Little calling in 220 medical workers available through federal programs and mobilizing 150 members of the National Guard to deal with the surge in unvaccinated COVID-19 patients overwhelming the state's hospitals. Daria Albinger, ABC News.
News Talk 1040 Tampa Bay weather forecast.
Good afternoon. I'm meteorologist Alan Archer at your News Talk 1040 WHBO Weather Center. Quiet this afternoon amidst partly sunny skies. Only a 10% chance of a stray thunder shower at 91. For them for tonight, that's a 30% late night thunder shower at 78. And then tomorrow, clouds up with a stronger 60% chance of increasing daytime storms, a high of just 85. I'm meteorologist Alan Archer, News Talk 1040 WHBO.
Commenter on Rumble says love from the UK. Hope you guys are doing well in the UK. And ask about hemp seed oil. The hemp seed oil product, again, it's not a product that I have too much information on, but just doing a quick research during the break, says it's has high amounts, hemp seeds and oil from them contain high amounts of linoleic acid. So that's, again, linoleic acid bioaccumulates in your body. Okay, so if you've been living in a standard American diet type country, which is unfortunately much of the Western world and places even like India and China, they have a lot of canola oil and bad oils that they're cooking with because they're cheap. And there's so much disinformation from the media that they don't even know that they're so bad. But these, when you've been eating these types of seed oil type foods for decades, something you might like hemp seed oil for some topical thing, but it's going to absorb, may go, I don't know. I have to get it back to you on the absorbing part. If it absorbs through the skin, does that affect some of the problems that linoleic acid does when it's highly accumulated in your body, like so many people have? But great question. Jason says people immediately go and look for a smear article on the source of any anti-narrative information. Deny, deflect, project, discredit, demonize, label, and delay. Common formula. That's the truth. People are afraid to get out of their cult. And so when they get into a group think, they will double down no matter what and come up with any kind of reason to hate something that's different from the monolithic group thing. That's why the media knows that, and their corporate interests know that, and they know how to. They use big tobacco style programs to program your mind to have a visceral disgust thing. I told you about that when they did their hit piece on what drug, and they called it dewormer, because the word worm, you're viscerally going to recoil from that. And the disgust reaction is one of the most powerful psychological motivators to not do something or to stay away from something. So when you hear livestock, you think, man, I don't want to be a livestock person. That's terrible. I don't want to be taking products that are for dogs and stuff and animals. what kind of a rube would do that, right? So they do that on purpose, even though they know this is a product that's also used in humans for decades. It's one of the most, prized medicines it has many years of antiviral experience, research, peer-reviewed papers showing. They don't say that because they're not interested in the truth. They're interested in their own power and their own worship. They want to be worshiped. I want to go to some more of these stories that are of interest in this topic of science. One of which is from express.co.uk from Dr. Jay Bhattacharya. He's a professor of medicine at Stanford University. Says the war on COVID should be over. We do not need lockdowns. And in the article, he says, instead of body bags, we now count the number of people who test positive for the virus that caused the disease. The problem is that the count of cases does not measure the actual danger that the virus poses to people. There is a 1,000-fold difference in the mortality risk from COVID infection between young and old. Based on the WHO data published before the vaccine, the survival rate after infection is 95% for those over 70, while for those under 70, it is 99.95%. Tracking cases among the vulnerable old is thus a much better marker of progress in the epidemic than cases overall. That was true before the incredible successful rollout of the vaccine among the vulnerable old in the UK, the US, and elsewhere. That success, alongside the durable natural immunity conveyed to people who have recovered, has decoupled cases and deaths from one another. This is not just a theoretical proposition, it has been tested by experience. The success of Sweden in protecting the vulnerable from COVID-related deaths stems from prioritizing its elderly population before its third wave of cases this past spring. The same is true of the most recent wave of cases in the UK, with the vulnerable elderly and others with certain comorbid conditions now protected by the vaccine. High community prevalence of COVID no longer poses the risk of mortality it did in 2020. In every country where a sufficient proportion of the vulnerable population is vaccinated, mass testing programs are now useless. Yet counting cases is not just useless, it's actively harmful. First, testing is not free. Since the beginning of the epidemic, technicians have probed nasal cavities nearly 500 million times in the US and 225 million times in the UK. The typical test costs $125, which means the US and UK have together spent the order of $90 billion on COVID testing. If the goal is to save lives, that money would be better spent bankrolling vaccination programs for older, vulnerable people in poor countries. Tests should be reserved for the sick. Second, mass testing is an insidious form of lockdown by stealth. Testing regimens aim to check whether perfectly healthy people harbor the virus, though they displayed no symptoms whatsoever. Careful reviews of the published data show that a significant fraction of the time, though a PCR test for viral fragments, the type typically used for testing, may be positive, a healthy person is not infectious and poses no risk of spreading the virus. Further, the contact tracing system forces into quarantine countless people who come within the vicinity of the non-infectious healthy person who tested positive. The result is that a vast number of healthy adults and children are forced to stay at home and miss out on life with no infection control benefit whatsoever. Third, mass testing causes lockdown. When cases go up, the media and politicians push for draconian and ineffective lockdown measures, including closed businesses and in the U.S. schools. Australia and New Zealand are the apotheosis of this policy of institutionalized hypochondria, where governments impose lockdowns whenever a single case is found. This tactic works because obsessive case tracking and reporting are closely tied to the sense of panic and dread in the population. The Government Scientific Advisory Board, SAGE, has admitted to using media to increase the sense of personal threat in the UK. This practice is deeply unethical and will ultimately harm trust in public health. It is not a coincidence that case counts trackers have featured prominently in the propaganda campaign. Though cases will come and go with the seasons, whatever we do, COVID deaths will no longer rise in proportion thanks to the vaccine protection of the vulnerable. Epidemiologists can track cases using population sampling and surveillance systems as they like, but there is no further need for lockdown, quarantines, and fear. Learning to live with COVID means continuing research to find better treatments and better vaccines. It means continuing to prioritize the vulnerable and extending this protection around the world. It means a return of public health to a holistic vision that extends beyond infection control. The virus now joins 200 other pathogens, give or take, in regular circulation in human societies. The war on COVID should be over. So that's a professor of medicine from Stanford University. So that's a perspective that, again, is very valid. It's very frequent among a lot of great top-notch scientists, but it's one that gets a lot of censorship from the low-info media. NewYorkMag.com has a story. The science of masking kids at schools remains uncertain. That's by David Zweig. And it talks about in the realm of science and public health policy outside the U.S., many of America's peer nations around the world, including UK, Ireland, all of Scandinavia, France, Netherlands, Switzerland, and Italy, have exempted kids with various age cutoffs from wearing masks in classrooms. Conspicuously, there's no evidence of more outbreaks in schools in those countries relative to schools in the U.S., where the solid majority of kids wore masks for an entire academic year and will continue to do so for the foreseeable future. Those countries, along with the WHO, whose child masking guidance differs substantially from the CDC's recommendations, have explicitly recognized that the decision to mask students carries with it potential academic and social harms for children and may lack a clear benefit. To date, the highly transmissible Delta variant has not led them to change this calculus. Many experts I spoke with told me that while the Delta variant represents a major and concerning new development in the pandemic, it probably shouldn't change our thinking on mask requirements for schools. But here in the U.S., the message looks different. On July 9th, a little more than a month after the study was published, the CDC released updated guidance for schools, including the recommendation that masks should be worn indoors by all ages, age 2 and older. How disrespectful. Who are not fully vaccinated. 10 days later, the American Academy of Pediatrics took the guidance a step further and said that everyone in school over age 2 should wear masks regardless of vaccination status. The CDC later matched the AAP's guidance. The extreme political heat around the issue of masks in schools is making it hard to have a coherent conversation about the science. At the risk of generalizing, much of blue state America is strongly in favor of masks in schools, while much of red state is opposed. In Florida, Tennessee, and elsewhere, local school board meetings are verging on violence as parents and officials fight over the question. But with tens of millions of American kids headed back to school in the fall, their parents and political leaders owe it to them to have a clear-sighted, scientifically rigorous discussion about which anti-COVID measures actually work and which might put an extra burden on vulnerable young people without meaningfully or demonstrably slowing the spread of the virus. In that context, the best practices for mask use in school, elementary schools in particular, are much less obvious than CDC and news headlines about keeping schools safe might have you believe. The study published by the CDC was both ambitious and groundbreaking. It covered more than 90,000 elementary school students and 169 Georgia schools from November 16 to December 11, and was, according to the CDC, the first of its kind to compare COVID-19 incidents in schools with certain mitigation measures in place to other schools without those measures. Scientists I spoke with believe that the decision to not include the null effects of a student masking requirement and distancing, hybrid models, etc., in the summary amounted to foul drawing these findings, a term researchers use for the practice of burying studies that don't produce statistically significant results. That a masking requirement of students failed to show independent benefit is a finding of consequence and a great interest, says Vinay Prasad, an associate professor at the University of California, Department of Epidemiology and Biostatistics. It shouldn't have been included in the summary. The summary gives the impression that only masking of staff was studied, says Tracy Hogue, an epidemiologist and senior author of a separate CDC study on COVID-19 transmission in schools. Quote, when in reality there was this additional important detection about a student masking requirement not having a statistical impact. After the CDC and the American Academy of Pediatrics issued their student mask guidance last month, I contacted both organizations asking for the evidence or underlying data upon which they had based their recommendations. The AAP didn't respond to multiple requests. The CDC press office replied that since children under 12 cannot be vaccinated, the agency recommends schools do universal masking, and included links to unrelated materials on vaccines in a recent outbreak among adults. Over the course of several weeks, I also corresponded with many experts, epidemiologists, infectious disease specialists, an immunologist, a pediatricians, and a physician publicly active in matters related to COVID, asking for the best evidence they were aware of that mask requirements on students were effective. Nobody was able to find a data set as robust as the Georgia results. That is, a large cohort study directly looking at the effects of a mask requirement. The closest is a study published in Science based on a Facebook survey that was suggestive but not conclusive of marginal benefit of student masking. So there really isn't any strong evidence that this provides any benefit. But there's a lot of evidence that doing this to kids is going to hurt them in many different ways. And so this should be something that, again, is up for parents to decide how they want to deal with their kid. If they have a kid that has particular issues, is immunocompromised, it's probably better for them to homeschool their kids or get them out of, government schools anyways if they're in a bad shape. If they have a kid that's got problems with obesity, they need to get them off of seed oils and high sugar. And then make sure they're getting sunshine and getting vitamin D and taking care of their kids. But they shouldn't be trying to force their neighbors' kids, especially at 2 years old. I mean, the stupidity of this stuff is absolutely insane. Let's take a quick break. We'll return in just a moment, live on A Neighbor's Choice with more news and analysis.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. It's a stressful process. There are attorneys in Tampa Bay that keep clients well informed, creating less stress. That law firm is Catania. Personal injury law is defended with full disclosure. There is no guessing game. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents, the law firm of Catania will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims don't realize they have a claim for the loss until they talk to Catania. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to Catania.com. Over 28 years in practice. Catania, personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys. Catania, putting families first.
Office Tampa. Not attorney spokeswoman.
Who is your neighbor? Dave and Wally are team drivers for Oakley Transport. One day, they came across a very serious accident on the highway. Some might pass on by, but Dave and Wally saw there was no time to waste. They jumped into action and saved 2 people's lives with moments to spare. That's the kind of courageous love we need more of today. It reflects the respected culture Oakley Transport develops with their driving professionals. CDLA licensed drivers. Join Oakley Transport today for a rewarding career. Visit oakleytransport.com. That's oakleytransport.com.
Hello, David Gronowski here. You're live on A Neighbor's Choice with us on FM, AM across Florida and worldwide on our video stream and podcast network. Happy to be with you, looking at the news, breaking through the sacred cows of groupthink one by one every day, because we believe that fresh ground beef and steaks are the best thing to keep the doctor away. Joining me now is State Representative Anthony Sabatini. How you doing?
Never been better, David. Thanks for having me on again.
Yeah, I wanted to have you on because I saw you put out a note. You said, I've sent on your Twitter page, you said, today I sent a letter to put all of my legislative colleagues on the record about whether they support an emergency legislative session to ban all vaccine and mask mandates in Florida. The public has a right to know which elected officials will stand up for their rights. Can you dive into this a little bit?
Absolutely. So, we have really a crisis on our hands right now in the United States, and Florida, the supposedly free state of Florida, is no exception to it. We have the greatest erosion of individual liberty and freedom in terms of our citizens' rights than we've had really arguably in 50 or 60 years in American history. It's quite shocking, really. And what we need is people to stand up and stop the mask and vaccine mandates on men, women, and children throughout the state of Florida, and go back to the traditional idea that individual liberty should reign supreme, that people should be able to be personally responsible for themselves, and that woke corporations, local governments, and school boards shouldn't be able to infringe and bully people and infringe their fundamental liberties. So our state legislators need to call a special session, join me in calling for a special session, to ban these mask and vaccine mandates. And right now, what you're finding out is that citizens are finding out all around the state that the state legislature and the governor have the ability right now to call a special session and then to just put a stop to this tyranny, put a stop to this insanity in the state of Florida, yet they're not doing so. These Republicans who pretend to be for freedom and constitutional rights, and civil rights, and freedom to choose are allowing cities, counties, school boards, and employers to bully people and mandate that they get vaccinated or wear a mask or be tested every single day. And it's ridiculous, and it needs to end. So I did a formal poll today with all the state legislators in the state to find out if they really believe we need a special session, as I do, next week to ban mask and vaccine mandates. And it went out this morning, and so far the only people to reply are the far-left Democrats who emphatically disagree with the idea, and they believe that they don't believe in freedom whatsoever. They believe everyone should be mandated to wear a mask permanently for the rest of their life, be permanently vaccinated, and receive a booster shot every 6 months to their death, and wear a mask and get tested every day. It's quite scary, but that's what they believe. So I'm waiting to see if our governor and our state Speaker of the House and Senate President and all the other Republicans will stand up and fight, as I've been doing, against the COVID tyranny.
So what is the problem with the folks who are moderate centrists or conservatives or whatever? And why are they not taking this issue on? Are they afraid that it's not politically popular right now? Or what's the issue with their ability to stand up for liberty here?
Well, it's a combination of that and one other thing. So, yes, first I'd say they lack the backbone to fight for fundamental liberty because they don't want to be treated badly or called mean names by the far-left media. And, the definition of a rhino and a weak Republican in my eyes is somebody who alters their behavior or voting record based on whether they're going to be attacked by the media or not. And that's most Republicans. They're very weak, spineless people. They're not willing to make a stand for liberty because they know they're going to be called mean names by the media and by the Democrats. So that's one issue. The other issue is a lot of these Republicans are simply bought off and influenced by woke corporate interests that want to be able to treat their employees like cattle, whether they're public or private employers, treat them like cattle and mandate every aspect of their life and individual lives. And, they're beholden to these special interests like Walt Disney World and the giant hospitals or even the local governments that control the, firefighters and police departments, et cetera. And they just simply don't want to interfere with that. So they're really just worse than useless. They're like a fake opposition party. And too many of the rhino, spineless Republicans have become just that, a fake opposition party that basically tacitly agrees with the Democrats on most issues. And it's time for that to change and for people to stand up and either primary these Republicans to get rid of them or hold them accountable and make sure they do the right thing.
So what would you say to the argument that some would say, well, look, we have to allow a mask mandate because you don't have an individual liberty to send your kid if he's got or she's got COVID symptoms and they end up coughing or something in the classroom with the other kid. That other kid comes home and gives it to their grandma or someone who's got an immune compromise. Now you've got them in the hospital. What would you say to that argument? Because that's the one they use a lot.
Well, I don't know anyone who's sane that uses that argument because grandma can be vaccinated at any moment. That's the irony of this whole situation. Anyone that wants to be vaccinated or wear a mask can go out and do it at any given time. Anybody can be protected at any time through whatever medical intervention they believe in, vaccines, all the different treatments that are out there now. There's a gathering storm of them that, of course, masks. Nobody is at risk by anyone who's not vaccinated or masked if that person themselves decides to go get vaccinated. So it's this whole gigantic, circular, insane logic of you have to go protect yourself to protect me, even though I could be vaccinated anytime for free. So I don't know anyone who's sane or rational that makes the argument that everybody else has to be protected or has force to protect somebody who is choosing not to be vaccinated. It's just completely ludicrous, and even trying to deal with that logic and face it down makes me feel like I'm losing IQ points even thinking about it. It's such a stupid argument, but that's where we're at.
What about the in the terms of the ban? Does the ban that you're proposing ban the mandates and vaccine passports from not just government but also private entities?
Absolutely. These corporations are now entities of the state. They're organized, legally administered by the state. They're quasi-state actors. And in the case of the large corporations, they're really almost state-sponsored terrorists. They enforce things and harm people in ways that government would usually be disallowed from. They channel, they're participants in the cancel culture, the censorship that the government can't do, large corporations can do. Vaccine mandates, mandatory mask rules, and other types of sick discipline. CRT is going to be questionable in the long run whether government can mandate it. So instead, they're having corporations and mandate CRT. We have to treat these corporations as government themselves. They are and oftentimes more powerful than government, and they operate under the force, and they are mandated by government in many ways from to what they can and can't do. So it's silly that people still want to make the distinction between what these world corporations are doing and a local government. They're either the same or worse depending on the issue.
Well, finally, since we have you just a couple minutes left, I wanted to get you to respond to the way Biden has handled the withdrawal of the Afghanistan war and the forces, how that was handled. You are a member of the Florida State National Guard, so I wanted to get your take on this as a person that served in the military.
Oh, you mean the whole Afghanistan debacle?
Yeah.
Well, it's really just quite shameful. We should be celebrating the end of a 20-year war that should have been a one-year war or non-war. We should have really just dropped bombs in 2001 and 2 and been gone by 2002 and perhaps latest 2003. And here we are 20 years later. We should be celebrating the final end of it, but we can't because the military-industrial complex, the Department of Defense, the Pentagon is so inept, so corrupt, so badly run, and this administration is so incredibly corrupt and just ineffective and destructive that we have on our hands, I think, one of the worst military operations, and I'm talking about the withdrawal, of course, in the history of our country, to the point where it's so incompetent we just armed terrorists and hostile forces throughout the Middle East with hundreds of millions of dollars of weapons and directly caused the largest single life loss in Afghanistan in over a decade. 13 young heroes killed for no reason other than the pure incompetence of the Pentagon and this White House. So we can't celebrate the end of the Afghanistan war right now because of this disturbing, non-existent plan for withdrawal that was so badly executed. That, and the worst part is it's actually going to get worse. We're not seeing the worst end of the withdrawal in Afghanistan. I think there's going to be even worse consequences to come of it because we just chose to trust a deep state and provide no oversight of a Pentagon and Department of Defense that is ineffective and fails at its job and cannot win wars any longer. And Lord knows what the long-term consequences of that is going to be. But that's my thoughts on that.
Well, Anthony Sabatini, I appreciate you coming on the program, and best of luck in your campaign for U.S. Congress, because that would be another opportunity to shake up the war machine if you're elected there. So keep up the good work on that front.
Thanks, David. Appreciate it.
And that's it for A Neighbor's Choice, folks. You can email me hello@aneighborschoice.com. That's hello@ aneighborschoice.com. I'm David Gronowski. Godspeed.
Your home for news, talk, and information. 1040 WHBO Pinellas Park, Tampa Bay's all